They didn't just throw her out. They replaced her before the echo of the closing gates had even faded. No warning, no hesitation, no dignity spared. One moment, Nia Carter was a wife inside one of the most powerful houses in Seoul's underworld. And the next, she was standing outside iron gates with a single bag and a silence that cut deeper than any blade they'd ever pulled. What she didn't know? She wasn't leaving empty. And 3 years later, she would walk back through those gates, not to save them, but to prove they never deserved to throw her out in the first place. If stories like this hit different for you, subscribe to Afro-Korean Chronicles. We're just getting started. Power had a scent in that mansion. Sharp, expensive, suffocating. Blood and money mixed so long they smelled the same. Nia noticed it within days of marrying June Park. A man feared enough that his name traveled faster than rumors, faster than bullets. Everything about that house was cold. The marble floors, the long hallways, the way conversation stopped when she entered a room, not out of respect, out of judgment. She didn't belong there, not in their eyes. She was bold, warm, unapologetically alive. Her laughter carried. Her presence filled space. She wore color in a house that only knew black and silence. And to Madame Park, the woman who didn't just run the family, she was the family that made Nia a problem. "You present yourself like a spectacle," the older woman said one evening, her eyes scanning Nia's bright yellow dress with the kind of disgust reserved for weakness. Nia smiled anyway. "I'd rather be seen than erased." That answer alone sealed her fate. Madame Park didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her word was law. Her approval was survival. And she had already decided Nia wouldn't get either. The humiliation started small. Comments at dinner. "That's not how we do things here. You wouldn't understand. It's cultural. Perhaps you should observe more. Speak less." Then it escalated. They excluded her from meetings, spoke Korean around her deliberately, then laughed when she didn't catch the joke, corrected her pronunciation like she was a child, moved her seat farther from June at family gatherings, and every single time, she looked at him, waiting, hoping, praying he would say something. Anything. He never did. Behind closed doors, June was not the man the world feared. He was softer, quieter. The way he held her sometimes felt like he needed her more than he understood. But the second his mother entered the room, he disappeared, replaced by obedience, by silence, by someone who would never choose her out loud. "Why don't you ever defend me?" Nia asked him one night, her voice barely above a whisper. June didn't look at her. "It's complicated." "No," she said. "It's simple. You're just afraid." He didn't deny it. And that hurt more than anything his mother ever said. Still, Nia tried. She learned the language slowly, carefully, sat through meals where no one bothered to include her, smiled through conversations she wasn't meant to understand. She showed up to events on June's arm, knowing the whispers followed. Useless, out of place, a mistake, foreign. But the worst whisper, the one that cut deepest, barren. 2 years of marriage. No child. And in a family like the Parks, legacy was everything. Bloodline was power. Madame Park made sure Nia felt it. "A wife who cannot give her husband an heir is no wife at all," she said one evening, loud enough for the whole table to hear. Nia's fork stopped midair. June kept eating, didn't even flinch. The doctors came next. Tests, appointments, questions that stripped her bare, all arranged by Madame Park, all designed to prove one thing. Nia was the problem. "Perhaps you're simply incompatible," Madame Park said, her tone clinical, cold. as if Nia were a broken appliance that needed replacing. Nia looked at June. "Are you going to let her say that to me?" He stared at his plate. "She's just concerned about the family." That night, Nia cried until there was nothing left. She even tried to help, noticed things, patterns, shipments that didn't match records, men who showed up to meetings but never stayed long, small inconsistencies that felt wrong. She mentioned it to June once. "I think someone in your circle isn't loyal." He kissed her forehead like she was naive. "You don't understand how this works." She did. Better than he thought. But he didn't want to hear it. Not from her. Then came the final blow. "You will leave this house," Madame Park said one evening, her tone calm but absolute. They were alone in the sitting room. No witnesses. No mercy. "You have been here 2 years. No child. No purpose. You are a weight this family cannot afford to carry." Nia's hands trembled. "You can't do that." Madame Park's smile was thin, cold. "I can, and I will. You leave willingly, or I remove my son from this house entirely, from the business, from everything he has ever known." Nia didn't argue. She didn't beg. She just looked for June. When she found him, he already knew. She could see it in his face. "You're going to let her do this," Nia said. Not a question. A realization. June's jaw tightened. "She's my mother. And I'm your wife." Silence. "June, please." More silence. And that silence. That was the moment everything ended. She packed one bag, walked out with her head high, and didn't cry until the gates shut behind her. But 2 weeks later, everything changed. Nia stood in a small clinic bathroom, staring at 2 pink lines. Pregnant. She laughed, then cried, then laughed again. All that time, all those tests, all that shame. And now? Now she was carrying his child. For a moment, just a moment, she thought about going back, telling him, proving Madame Park wrong. Then she remembered. The silence, the humiliation, the way he let them erase her. No, this child, these children, as she would later find out, would never know that kind of rejection. She disappeared, changed cities, started over. And when the twins were born, a boy and a girl, both healthy, both perfect, she named them herself. No Park family traditions, no Madame Park's approval, just hers. She built a life. Quiet, small, free. For 3 years, she was happy. Then Madame Park found her. Nia opened the door one afternoon to find her standing there, older, thinner, but still carrying that same cold authority. "I know about the children," Madame Park said. "No greeting. No pretense." Nia's blood went cold. "You will bring them back to Seoul. They are Parks. They belong with their family." Nia's hand tightened on the doorframe. "No." Madame Park's eyes narrowed. "You don't have a choice." "I do, and I'm making it. Those children are heirs. They carry my son's blood. You cannot keep them from their legacy." Nia stepped forward, calm, steady. "You threw me out because you said I was barren. You humiliated me. You broke me. And your son stood there and let you." Her voice didn't shake. "So no, you don't get them. You don't get to erase me and then take the only thing that's ever been truly mine." Madame Park's composure cracked, just slightly. "I can make your life very difficult," Nia smiled, not warmly. "You already did. I survived, and I'll do it again." She shut the door, and Madame Park, for the first time in her life, had no power. But that encounter wasn't the end, because a week later, Nia received a message, not from Madame Park, from someone inside the family, someone who knew the empire was falling apart, and they needed her help. By the next week, Madame Park had already chosen a replacement, Her name was Sue Min. Everything Nia wasn't. Quiet. Refined. Korean. Controlled. From a respected family with old ties to the underworld. Perfect. June didn't resist. He married her. Because it was easier than fighting. Because that's what he had always done. The wedding was flawless. Traditional. The new wife fit seamlessly into the family, bowed at the right moments, smiled without taking up space. The house felt calmer, more proper. Madame Park was satisfied. And June? He convinced himself this was what peace looked like. But peace built on the wrong foundation doesn't last. At first, it was small. Business deals falling apart at the last second. Confidential information slipping to rivals. Shipments intercepted before they even left the docks. Then it escalated. Money disappeared from accounts no one was supposed to know existed. Warehouses were hit. Clean, professional, like someone had handed over blueprints. Their men turned up dead. Not in fights, in executions. Madame Park's closest allies started pulling back. Old families who had stood with them for decades suddenly went quiet. The empire wasn't just under pressure, it was hemorrhaging, unraveling from the inside. And all the while, Sue Min stood at the center of it. Calm, supportive, dutiful, watching everything, hearing everything, reporting everything. Because she had never been their ally. She had been planted, carefully, strategically. A mole sent by a rival family to dismantle them from the inside. And Madame Park, the woman who prided herself on reading people, on controlling every variable, on never making mistakes, had handed her the keys herself. By the time June realized the truth, the damage was already everywhere. Blood, money, trust, all of it bleeding out. And the one person who could have seen it earlier, who had tried to warn him, was gone because he let her walk away. The night the truth finally surfaced, it didn't come from their intelligence network. It didn't come from their men. It came from the one person they had discarded. Nia, she didn't return quietly. She walked back through those same iron gates with evidence in her hands and purpose in her steps. No fear, no hesitation. Accounts, names, connections, transactions. A complete map of the betrayal. She dropped the files in front of June without a word. The room went silent. Madame Park's composure cracked as she flipped through the documents. Every page confirmed it. Every detail undeniable. Sue Min wasn't just disloyal. She was the leak, the architect of their collapse. I chose her, Madame Park whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Her hands shook. For the first time in her life, she sounded unsure. June couldn't even meet Nia's eyes, because everything she had been, everything he had lost, was standing right in front of him, fixing the mess he helped create. "How did you—" he started. Nia cut him off. "I paid attention. Something you never let me do." Her voice was steady, cold. "I saw the cracks 3 years ago, but you didn't want to hear it, not from me." Madame Park looked up then, really looked at her, and for the first time, she saw what she had thrown away. The fallout was brutal. Sue Min was exposed and removed, not gently, not quietly. In their world, betrayal had one answer, but the damage she caused couldn't be undone overnight. The empire was wounded, bleeding, barely holding together. Allies were gone. Money was gone. Trust was gone. And Nia? She stayed. Not for them, but because she refused to let destruction win. She worked, rebuilt systems, closed gaps, reached out to families who had distanced themselves and convinced them the Parks were still worth standing with. Strengthened what was left. Saved what she could. And when everything stabilized, when the house stopped burning, she packed her bag. Again. "You're leaving," June asked, his voice cracking under the weight of everything he had lost. Naya didn't hesitate. Yes. What about the children? June's face went pale. What children? Naya met his eyes. The twins. A boy and a girl. 3 years old. The heir left the room. You were pregnant, he whispered. Yes. And you didn't tell me. Nia's expression didn't change. You didn't deserve to know. June staggered back like she'd struck him. Madam Park stood frozen, her face unreadable. Your mother came to my home, Naya continued, demanded I bring them back, called them heirs, said they belonged to the Parks. She stepped closer. I sent her away, just like you let her send me away. Madam Park finally spoke, her voice cracked. You kept my grandchildren from me? Naya didn't flinch. You called me barren. You said I had no purpose. You threw me out like I was nothing. Her voice dropped. Cold. Final. You don't get to rewrite history now that it's convenient. June broke completely. Please, he whispered. Please. Let me meet them. Let me... No. They're my children. They're my children. You gave up that right when you stayed silent. Tears streamed down his face. I was wrong. I know I was wrong. I lost you. I lost everything. Please, don't take them from me, too. For a brief second, hope flickered. Then she shook her head. No. I loved you, she said quietly. But love cannot survive being second place. And my children will never know what it feels like to be unwanted. Silence followed. Deep. Final. June turned to his mother then, and something cold settled behind his eyes. Something that looked like grief and rage. You don't get to fix this, he said, his voice low and sharp. You caused it. All of it. Madam Park opened her mouth, but nothing came. You called her barren, June continued, his voice shaking. You humiliated her. You threw her out. And I let you. He looked at Nia. And now I have children I'll never know. Because of you. Because of me. Madam Park's face crumpled. Because for the first time in her life, someone had taken her power. Not through force, through truth. And just like that, the empire she had built her entire life around meant nothing. Because the one person she tried to control had finally turned away from her. And the son she thought she owned would never look at her the same way again. Naya walked out of those gates again, but this time, she didn't cry, because she wasn't leaving broken anymore. She was leaving whole. Behind her stood a man who finally understood her worth. Too late. A mother who gained control and lost everything. And an empire that survived, only because of the woman they once threw away. 3 years. That's how long it took for them to realize what they had. But she had known her worth all along. And her children? They would never doubt theirs. That was the real power. So let me ask you, if you were Naya, would you have let June meet his children? Or are some betrayals too deep to forgive? Drop your answer below.